I'm here today with my guest co-host, Dr. Deborah Gilboa, stress and resilience expert, Dr. G for short. And we want to talk a little bit about resilience, right? In the second half of a conversation about burnout is a natural progression to talking about resilience. And I'd love to hear from your perspective, Dr. G, kind of a 30,000 foot view. What should organizations be doing, or at least thinking about, in the months ahead to sort of refill the resilience gas tank for the people in their employ?
If it's okay, I'd like to start just with a 10-second definition of resilience, because
Great.
in my research, what I found is that this is a word we all carry around, but we have slightly different things in the bucket of this word. Resilience is your ability to navigate change and come through it the kind of person or the kind of organization you want to be. When I ask people to define resilience, the first answer I get is the ability to bounce back. But we're not rubber bands, we're people. So we are changed by everything we go through. We don't bounce back, and everyone's in the middle of this conversation. We're trying to get back to, a new normal, or what will things look like that'll be different. Nobody expects it to be 2019 all over again. So when we think about resilience, what we're talking about is people's ability to navigate change and come through it, the kind of person they want to be or the kind of organization that you want to be. So that's why it's helpful to refill that tank. I mentioned earlier in the show that resilience is a growth commodity. You can grow it, but some things make it drop. Some things really make it tank. And as you're thinking about this, this is your antidote to mental distress. There is no antidote to stress, because stress comes from every change, the change we want and the change we don't, the change we expect and the change that shocked us. So I don't try and help anybody reduce stress, because stress is actually a tool that builds our mental health and resilience, like exercise is a tool that builds our bodies.
Right.
What we need to do is be able to handle that stress and feel less winded by it. Just like with exercise, right? To be able to walk 6 blocks and not feel tired or have our knees hurt, then to deal with the stresses that are coming. And I had an employee at a seminar that I did for a corporate client recently say, I hope to never hear again, it's a marathon, not a sprint. She said, it's not a marathon, it's life. Said, a marathon, you can choose to show up or not show up. You can quit. You can say marathons are for, I don't even know what crazy people. She said, I can't choose not to run this. This is life. And so that's the why behind the question that you're asking me. Why should we try and refill this? Why do we have to think about or care about or put any of our budget into our employees' resilience? But there are some great ways to build resilience that do not have to do with adversity. You don't have to put your people in harm's way or throw them difficulty in order to strengthen them. That's grit, not resilience. Resilience, there are a bunch of ways to help build. Quick plug that I have a book coming out about this in the fall. But in the meantime, right now, a couple of very specific things that you could do would be to, number one, build connections. We don't need to dip as deep into our own bucket of resilience or our own tank if we have a network of tanks. So if on a day where my resilience is really pushed by what's happening at work, and also was pushed by a text I got from my mom, or something going on outside the purview of work, and maybe your resilience is pushed by what's happening at work, but you're not as pushed by other factors that particular Tuesday morning. If we're connected, I know how to say to you, hey, you're great at this. Can you give me a hand with this? So every time we build connections through those camaraderie questions, really simply build connections through shared birthday months, through working on a project together, through gratitude expressions, through opportunities to share a little bit of like a recipe from our family, whatever it is, all the different ways that we share with each other and build any kind of connections, we will strengthen people's resilience for a time in the future where they need just a little bit from someone else.
That's really interesting because what I'm hearing you say is that when we see people under stress, sometimes the best way to help them is just to interact with them without talking about the stress. And we simultaneously help them restore resilience by doing so. Did I have that right?
That's it exactly. And so it's a good rescue medicine.
Yeah.
You can see the lens I look at everything, but it's a good preventive medicine as
Mm-hmm.
well. If I walk into my workplace having had a very difficult time before I got to work, whether I tell people about it or not doesn't really impact how supported I feel. It's
Mm-hmm.
whether I believe if I told people that they would care.
Mm-hmm.
So I may not choose to share it, but if I know that there are people there who over Zoom or over Teams or in person will give me a smile, will be interested in how I'm doing, will have a point of connection that has to do with work or doesn't have to do with work, the wider my web and the deeper my connections within that web, the more resilient I will be able to be. It's only one of the 8 skills of resilience is to build connections, but it's a really crucial one. And it's one that bosses can support in their workplace at any time, even when things are going great.
So, and it's not just about the interactions. Then it's about, and we've talked a lot about this on this show as well. How are leaders creating opportunities for people to experience that? It's not enough for me as a leader to just be concerned with the quality of my interactions with the people that report to me. I have to be concerned with the quality of the interactions taking place between the people on the team. And I specifically need to be thoughtful about creating opportunities for them to interact in ways that aren't taxing. That's why we do the birthday parties and the bridal showers and the whose baby picture is this on the bulletin board, so that we can foster those kinds of connections, which it sounds like is a stress buster and a resilience booster.
It absolutely is. And you're really smart, Joe, to say create opportunities. You can't micromanage other people's
Right.
relationships, but that creating opportunities for people to make those connections and not looking at that as detracting from work or
Mm-hmm.
something they need to hide or sneak in, but actually welcoming it. And that in and of itself builds your employees' trust with you and does make them stronger at their work.
Yes. So I had a question that I knew I wanted to ask you today. I was really curious about your answer. Um, I think right now there is more being written about burnout and resilience and stress than perhaps ever before. When you think about what we see in online news and on LinkedIn, every morning I read the news in Apple News' aggregator, and these topics are everywhere. There's a lot of advice floating around out there for how to tackle burnout in the workplace and how to restore resilience. What is the bad advice, Dr. G? What's the stuff that you're seeing being suggested that's floating around out there in the ether that drives you nuts?
The
I love the sigh, like you're stealing yourself.
I am a little bit because there is a generational gap. And it's not to say that these are only people who are old school command and control bosses like you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
There is still a fundamental generational gap between, I'm going to put myself on the wrong side of history here and say with Gen X
Mm-hmm.
and boomers, we tend to think that we're coddling people too much,
Yes.
that we are um, creating fragility. It is
Mm.
possible to do that. And there are some experiences happening to kids and teens that I agree are coddling and creating fragility. But empathy does not create fragility. And the mistake that I see the most is when people say, in essence, and you'll tell me if you've ever seen articles that you agree said this, gave this impression, that if your team is struggling, it's their job to build their resilience so that they can suck it up and work
Mm.
harder no matter what happens. Even if that's not what bosses mean, sometimes that is the feeling that employees get from resilience programs, from mental health initiatives. They get this
Yes.
sense that, like, I'm not going to worry about any of the things that are pressing on you. I'm just going to tell you, hey, I heard you could grow a thicker skin, so do that.
Yeah. Or hey, well, if you're struggling, then call the EAP. But for now, get back to work.
Right. On your own time, please.
Right. So
So
that's
when
the,
we
go
say,
ahead.
yeah, you're right. I see how we're a part of the problem, and I heard how you could be better at being the solution. So
Hmm.
why don't you avail yourself of the resources that I paid somebody to give you, and then do that, and it doesn't involve me. That's the mistake that I feel people, and I have actually seen for sure articles that are saying it. I don't understand why you're taking this on, bosses.
Hmm.
This is just about, this is finally these people are being tested. And it's always set up in this generational way of these kids today. The first quote that I've ever heard from someone who said kids today said, and I'm going to have to paraphrase it because it's long, but said, children today sit when their elders enter, they chatter before company, they eat all the food. That was Socrates who said that.
Yeah.
Kids today is not a new complaint, and it's not a useful complaint.
It's a spot on point. I've done some of that generations in the workplace training for clients in the past, and I have told every group I've ever been in front of that the complaints you have about the generation coming in after you are the exact same complaints that the generation before you had. Especially in America, we have two favorite sports: overeating and criticizing youth. Like, that's everybody's favorite things to do. These kids today, they don't know the value of hard work. It's all cyclical. It's all the same stuff.
The motto of the boomers when they were teens and young adults was don't trust anybody over 30. That's what the bumper stickers were. That's what the posters were. I mean, if you think about it, there were some great political and economic reasons for that, but the boomers said don't trust anybody over 30.
Yeah. All right, so here's my last question for you today, Dr. G. And this maybe is more of an in-the-weeds question than anything else. We have leaders who know they want to attend to resilience, but we know if we try to talk to our teams about resilience, and we even use that word, they may want to just throat punch us, because after the year that we've had, really, you want to talk to me about resilience? Didn't I just prove it? I'm still here. I'm still doing the work. Don't talk to me about resilience. How about you just give me some more vacation time, please, and thank you. So what are some things that leaders and organizations can do, and you've given us some of this already, but I'm specifically putting it in the context: how do we attend to resilience without talking about resilience, but staying away from the word?
This is a question that I've been asking business leaders for the last few weeks on a bunch of discovery calls, because I want to use the right language. So don't assume, ask. Listen to the language that your employees are using when you do these vital signs check-ins, when you say, hey, what don't I know about that's a struggle for you right now?
Right.
And they don't have to tell you anything that they feel is none of your business. You can set it in a work setting, but then use their language. The problem with doing resilience training right now is you're saying things have been hard, I expect them to get harder.
Right.
So I want to make sure that you survive, even though it's not going to get any better. That doesn't help. And it might be mental health, and it might be self-care, but it might be balance, or it might be fulfillment, or it might be mission. I don't know. And I really appreciate you pointing out that often as bosses, we only know what's true for us. So we need to ask, what are the problems that we need to solve for? Or we can ask specifically, what's hard that I don't know about? Or if we could solve for one thing in the next year that we haven't mentioned, what is it? Then we get their language. And that way we can evaluate, for example, programs like the programs you bring in and that I bring in to companies. I can sit as a leader and evaluate which of these programs seems to solve that problem, which speaks to that language. Or even better, reach out to someone like Joe, a consultant that you've worked with that you trust, and say, here's the problems I'm hearing about. What could you help us do to solve for that?
There's a pattern across everything that Dr. G has shared with us today. Such smart insight, so many helpful scripts and ideas. And the pattern is this: it's individual conversations happening over and over again where we solicit other people's ideas and opinions and their challenges, and then we don't ignore them. We take action in an effort to try to meet people where they are and help them move through what's happening in their lives and happening at work and maybe what's to come. And so, Dr. G, any final thoughts for us today?
I really want to point out that partnering is not the same as fixing. We're often really afraid to ask the question because we think, well, I won't know what to do about it, so I don't want to open that can of worms. Just asking builds connections, builds trust, and helps you retain excellent talent.
Perfect bow. For folks who are interested in keeping in touch with you or hearing from you more often, how can they follow you or find you out there on the internet?
Well, I have a specific ask. I would love to discover more about what you're dealing with in your workplace. So if that's useful to you, will you come find me on LinkedIn, please? Deborah Gilboa, and it's spelled right there on your screen and in the show notes. And just message me. Tell me that you heard me here on BossBetter Now, and I would be so grateful to learn what's going on in your company so that I can address what's really happening and not just, the assumptions I have.
We just found someone who uses LinkedIn for actual networking and communication. You're a unicorn, my friend. Most of the time, it's just spammy stuff out there. I'm so grateful to you for joining us today and sharing your insight and your expertise. And I know that there has been a great benefit to everyone who has been listening along the way today. So thank you for being here, my friend.
Thank you so much for the conversation, Joe. And to everyone who's listened, thanks for your time.